I don't even know anymore. Thank you for being here. So, I wanted to talk about meal plans today because I get a lot of questions about them. And people seem to think that they're going to solve their nutrition conundrums, so to speak. Whilst a meal plan can be helpful in a way, there's a lot of limiting factors when it comes to meal plans. And well, where do we start? It's a can of worms in and of itself. Meal plans often don't factor in a person's flavor preferences, doesn't factor in the type of textures a person likes, doesn't factor in whether a person gravitates more towards sweet or savory, doesn't factor in how a person eats. Are they a morning eater? Do they do better eating high protein? Do they do better eating? I mean, most people need more protein, let's be real. I've said that before, but some people gravitate more towards rich, salty, creamy food, and some people gravitate more towards crunchy and savory and maybe more carb rich foods. So, they are just a few of the very limiting factors when it comes to meal plans. And unless you're a figure competitor, someone who is looking to be on stage for a figure competition, so like a body building competition, a WBFF, INBA, IFBB, there's quite a few different federations, or unless you are an athlete competing in a weight category based sport, such as jujitsu, such as weightlifting, powerlifting, or even sailing. I myself have sailed. There are weight restrictions, but also minimum weights you need to make on a particular vessel. Then meal plans are not going to help for the average person. Certainly not long term. I've never met a person who is able to stick to a meal plan long term because life happens, guys. Like, life comes up. There's going to be a 40th birthday party to celebrate, a 50th birthday party to celebrate. There's going to be a wedding to attend. There's going to be the birth of a child. And we want to celebrate those moments with the people we love and care about in a way that feels natural to us. And for a lot of us, that means food and alcohol. And that's okay. No shade, no judgment. But this is one very, very limiting factor of a meal plan. And who am I to tell a person to eat the way that I eat? I have refined how I eat over the years. I continue to learn about different approaches to nutrition and take that with me in my stride. I use myself as a guinea pig. Though, when it comes to eating in a way that's going to be healthy and helpful, we also want to factor in diversity of foods too. And I see this with meal plans being, again, a limiting factor. Is often when we think about meal plans, we think about macros being carbs, proteins, fats, and alcohol. When we think about meal plans, we don't really pay so much attention to micronutrients, meaning vitamins and minerals. And we need those to be a healthy human. So there's no point in being able to reach all of your macros if you're reaching none of your micros. Chances are you'll end up with nutritional deficiencies. Chances are you'll end up being unhealthy, perhaps sick, unwell, and repeatedly so. Give you a perfect example. I didn't realize until December last year that though I was supplementing zinc, I was low in zinc. And no wonder I was sick frequently. And I was not really spending much time being well. It always felt like my body was trying to fight something off. So that's not because I was following a meal plan, that is for other reasons. But it just goes to highlight the importance of having sufficient vitamins and minerals. And when you're low in one, chances are you're low in a few. Chances are your body is not going to be able to perform at its best and optimize cognitive performance. So when it comes to doing your job, of course, we need to be able to think well. We need to be able to think clearly. That's pretty hard to do if something is missing. And for a lot of us, that is iron, which you've heard me talk about. So I fell into that category as well. I found out same time December last year that I was low in stored iron, being ferritin. If you don't know what your ferritin levels are, especially if you're a female and especially if you're active, do yourself a favor, go get checked, because to have sufficient iron levels really is a game changer. But we can come back to that. If you're interested to know more, send me a message. I'll send you some more resources. So meal plans, I feel, don't give a person enough education to serve them. They do not give a person enough context and nuance to understand what to eat and when. So what is helpful to eat at what time of the day, under what circumstances, under what conditions. And again, if we're looking to help people and really help them to move the needle on their health and well-being and fitness, then they need to understand why eating a certain food makes sense. Under what circumstances does it make sense to eat a carb-rich meal? Under what circumstances does it make sense to get more vitamin C in their diet? Under what circumstances does it make more sense to, let's say, leverage fat over carbs or carbs over fat? How much protein does a person need in a day? When should we go heavier on these ingredients and when should we be a little light-handed? That does not come with a meal plan. When you are that prescriptive with the way that you are teaching or trying to get someone to eat, all of that is missing. And again, I'm going to say that that's not helpful. I personally have had a meal plan from a nutritionist many years ago, and guess what? I didn't stick to it. I mean, I did, but I was so damn hungry on 1,200 calories a day that I couldn't sustain it. And again, often meal plans are written by nutritionists, and nutritionists often follow government guidelines when it comes to nutrition. And often these protocols and guidelines are set with political motives in mind, shall we say. So without having this turn into a big political argument, let's just keep it to that. So is it really helpful for someone to receive a very prescriptive overview on how to eat? I feel that makes sense if they're going to go on stage and compete again in a figure competition. If they're following a protocol for 12 to 24 weeks, if they have a coach who can help guide them through that, give them the context and reasoning as to why these decisions and choices should be made over another, then great. Again, that's very short-lived. Typically, people will train up to 2 years, perhaps for their first competition. And then from there on, they may train or diet, shall we say, for 12 to 24 weeks is the pretty typical timeline and time frame. But for the quote unquote average person who has a desk job, who has a 9 to 5, though does anyone actually have a 9 to 5? I don't think so. For people who are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, who probably travel for work, who may or may not have a child or children, a meal plan is perhaps the most unhelpful thing in the world and only going to be an additional source of stress. Now, if you are looking to move the needle on your health and fitness and nutrition specifically, my go-to approach with my clients is templates. Because when you give someone a template and a structure, and when you empower them to make sense of how they can tweak and adjust that based on their schedule, based on their demands, based on whether they're coming or going, whether they're exercising, whether they have a business lunch or a business dinner, then suddenly the person understands how to make the most of the situation that's in front of them, rather than going, oh my God, this is too complicated, this is too hard, panic, and then suddenly just revert to their old ways, which is often what happens when people don't have enough of an understanding of how to do something. When they don't have those skills that are, required to make those choices, we tend to default. That's just human nature. You can't blame a person for defaulting. We all do that in various ways. But we don't want that for our clients. When we want them to make progress, we want them to feel like they know what choices to make when. And that's when a template is 1,000 times more helpful. So I always like to start broad and then get more specific with the clients I work with. Typically, before exercise, carbs, okay? Especially before lifting weights or a vigorous activity, I want them to have carbs. If they're getting up an hour before training, I want them to have simple carbs, something that's easy to digest. It's not going to sit in their throat, it's not going to come out. Something that can be easy to grab and go with. And in most instances, a banana works really well. If people don't like bananas, my next best suggestion is usually either dates, medjool dates, or, and sometimes and or, depending on the person, coconut water. And coconut water, very easy to find in Singapore, very easy to get from the supermarket, easy to get from 7-Eleven, convenience store, easy to grab and go. Start drinking it before training, drink the rest during training. That's easy. If someone is going for a really big bike ride in the morning, but they don't like to eat before training, have more carbs with dinner. That is a template. I'm giving someone structure, I'm giving them context and understanding as to why that makes sense. What circumstances does it make sense to do that? What circumstances does it not make sense? Having a big pile of pasta and then getting on a long haul flight makes zero sense. That sounds awful. That sounds like, oh, my stomach hurts just thinking about that. Okay. When you take the time to explain that to a person, you empower them. And when you empower them, you actually help them help themselves. That should be the goal of every coach, not to give you an answer and always have you rely on me for an answer. That keeps people stuck. That is really terrible coaching. In fact, it's not coaching, to be completely honest. So, my go-to is templates. It's understanding the person's normal or abnormal day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month life, and then give them the general scope of what they need to understand with regards to what to eat and when. If a person usually works out in the morning, I need them to know that they need some sort of carbs before exercise. If they don't like to eat before training, I get them to eat carbs the night before. Most people are deficient in protein. You've heard me talk ad nauseum about that. So typically for women, I'm going to suggest 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal, and then at least 10 grams of protein per snack. Because if they're intentionally getting 20 grams of protein per meal and 10 grams per snack, and let's say they have 2 snacks a day, that's at least 80 grams of protein in the whole day. That ain't bad. That is maybe not quite where I need them to be. If they weigh 60 kilograms, I want them to get 90 grams of protein every 24 hours. So if we're getting 80, chances are they'll incidentally get another 5 to 10, whether it's through milk in their coffee, whether it's through edamame beans in their salad, whether it's through hummus. How good is hummus? Oh my God, guys, can we have a moment for hummus? But you get what I'm trying to say. So if we are registering 20 grams of protein per meal and 10 per snack, they're having 2 snacks a day, that's 80 grams of protein in the whole day, and maybe another 5 to 10 incidental grams of protein. That is pretty spot on, okay? That is a template, that is structure, that is not so prescriptive that a person has to start getting really OCD and really worked up on the numbers. And this is the other thing that meal plans don't really factor in is behavior. It's just behavioral change and human behavior and human psychology. It can be really unhelpful to give a perfectionist numbers because it invites more opportunity for them to judge themselves, be even more critical of themselves. And chances are, if they don't perfectly reach those numbers, they will find every way to sabotage and make sure they don't reach those numbers. And again, that is contributing to keeping a person stuck. And we don't want people to feel stuck. We want them to feel empowered. So giving someone who is very caught up in numbers, very detail oriented, very black and white, very right. How good is hummus? Thank you for saying that. I'm glad it's not just me. Do you have a favorite? Let me know if you have a favorite hummus. I'm really enjoying I want to say it's the Swan brand. It's called the skinny hummus. I didn't name it that, by the way. But it's low in fat, which means it's higher in protein. But what I like is you get even more of the chickpea flavor. And I feel that it actually tastes better than the others. So that's my current favorite, but let me know if you have a favorite. So getting back to meal plans, having so many numbers for a person to work with can be very overwhelming. Again, it can be just too much for a person to focus on at once, especially if they work 14 hours a day, especially if they have long haul flights, especially if they have a child or children, and a dog and a cat and a goose and everything else. It's just not factoring in a person's reality. If you are a figure athlete and you know that you are dieting for a competition to be on stage in 12 to 24 weeks, then this is perhaps a lot more feasible. But for the quote unquote average person, this makes no sense. It's disempowering. And again, if you have perfectionistic tendencies, this invites more opportunity for you to judge yourself. You'd be like, oh my God, I got 99 grams of protein. I need to get 1 more gram of protein. Where am I going to get 1 more gram of protein from? And then before you know it, shit has hit the fan because you can't get that 1 gram of protein without also getting 3 grams of carbs and also getting 1.5 grams of fat. And this is actually what happens to people. They get so caught up in these numbers and these metrics that unfortunately becomes a limiting factor. It doesn't empower them to make progress. In fact, I had a lady ask me on Saturday, just gone, she was asking me how many calories she should eat. And that's a reasonable question. It's a very reasonable question. I appreciate people wanting details because I myself am very detail oriented. Knowing where she is in her journey, it made no sense for me to tell her because she's not there yet. What I need her to focus on is getting consistent at meal prep, just getting consistent at finding recipes she's enjoying, at making time to order those groceries, get those groceries, to cook those meals, and enjoy that process. When she is immersed in that process and when she gets into the routine of doing that week in, week out, even if she's preparing Monday to Wednesday and maybe eating out Thursday and or Friday, that to me is what I need from her before we get into the specifics of numbers. If I give her how many calories she needs to eat now, she's already overwhelmed with meal prep. This is already not so normal for her that it's not part of her normal weekly routine, not yet. So, do I want to add to that as a coach and suggest that she now meal preps and tries to get X amount of calories every single day? No. Because again, if I know this person, if I know people, and if I know human psychology, and I have a pretty good grasp on that, chances are she'll either reach that number for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. She might eat out on Thursday, and then again, she will find every reason under the sun to make sure she does not hit that calorie intake. She will go way above and beyond it. She'll go, oh, look, I'm 100 calories over. Might as well have 4 shots of tequila or whatever the case may be. Okay. Now, I say that not as an attack on her, but I say that as coming from a place of just understanding people. This is what people are like. If we can't be right about ourselves, we'll make sure that we are completely, well, if we can't make the change, shall we say, if we don't make the change and prove to ourselves that we can stay on track with our calories, we will make damn sure that we never stay on track with our calories and that we don't just exceed it by 100, we exceed it by 500, because we're always going around with a magnifying glass looking for opportunities to find evidence that we're correct about something. So this is just humans being humans. And again, this is why I find templates to be more helpful. If you're eating out, one client I work with in Europe, her default is no bread. She finds it bloats her up. No attack on bread. I love bread. Bread and salted butter, like hello delish. But she feels bloated for eating it. So that's her personal choice. Respect. Her default is no bread, dressings and creams on the side, no alcohol, no dessert. That's her default. And she has lost 4.5 kilos since working with me at the start of August, 1st of August. And she eats out for business lunches. She eats out for business dinners. She eats out, I'm going to approximate 3 to 6 times a week, just by nature of the industry that she's in and what she does. And yet she has still lost 4.5 kilos last time I checked. So that's pretty phenomenal. And there's small changes. But she's been very consistent with that, and that's happened on her terms. That is sustainable for her. That feels good for her. And that is not a meal plan. That's just bread makes her feel bloated, so she goes without. Alcohol, She is not enjoying the feeling of that, maybe on a friend's birthday, perhaps, but outside of a really, really special occasion, not sitting so well with her. That's her choice. She gets salad dressings and any sauces on the side so she can, be a little bit more in control of that, have a little bit more influence over that. And favoring protein, just making sure at every meal that she has, especially when eating out, that she's either getting like a salmon fillet, um, that she's getting grilled chicken. So she's aiming for the lean meats, the really low fat lean meats that are high in protein. And she still feels like she's enjoying life. She's not missing out on life. She's not forgoing happy times, good times with friends. She's still traveling with friends. She's still, again, having business lunches and business dinners, and seeing amazing change and amazing results in her measurements. So when it comes to creating behavioral change, lowest barrier to entry, minimum effective dose, what do you feel you can move the needle on, which is going to be a change, but doesn't feel as though you're climbing Everest? That is the change you need to work towards. Because yes, you could go more extreme, but you won't sustain it. You need to think about creating change in layers. Now, don't work towards the 10th layer of creating change before you've gotten through the first. And this is where people get really impatient and they shoot themselves in the foot because they go, well, in order for this change to be effective, I have to create super extreme change. That's not the case. You need to create less extreme change and need to be more consistent. But consistency requires patience, and people have no patience because people are caught up judging themselves because they don't like sitting in the discomfort of that self-criticism and self-judgment. So actually what you need is to build out your bandwidth and your capacity to sit in that self-criticism. I'm not suggesting you wallow in pity, by the way. No, I'm not. That didn't ever do anyone any good. So don't wallow in pity. But also allow that feeling to be there, is what I'm trying to say. Allow yourself to feel that feeling, to feel whatever it is. Build out that bandwidth for that. Build out your capacity to sit in that. Understand that your impatience comes back to criticism and judgment and comparison. You feel like you should be here, but you're there. We've all experienced that. And again, you don't need more extreme change. You need less extreme change, but to be more consistent. Instead of doing something once a week or once a month, try and do it every 2 days or try and do it every day. But keep going with that. That is where people, don't see the change that they want long term. They don't keep going. They get shiny object syndrome again because it's nice to feel like you're doing something productive. And so if I change my approach, then that change will work, or the next change will work, or the next change will work. Again, it just comes back to being impatient, and impatience comes back to self-criticism, self-judgment, self-comparison, etc., etc., etc. So all of that to say, meal plans for quote unquote the average person doesn't work, is, I want to say, a waste of time. Call me controversial. A waste of time, not the best approach, and typically going to keep people stuck. My go-to approach is going to be a template, giving people that nuanced context understanding of when it makes sense to eat a certain way and why. And when a person understands that, they can take that forward for themselves and then just get really good at applying that time and time again and getting really consistent at that. And consistency is key, and that's what actually gets people results. So that's my 2 cents. If you enjoy this, make sure you give a little double tap. If you have any questions, reach out. I always want to talk about what you want to hear about. So send me your suggestions because I want to be relevant to you. So thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next live. If you want a recording of this, again, just reach out to me directly. If you are watching from other platforms, I'm on Instagram at Laura Phillips. Oh my God, what is my handle? At Laura Phillips, team Laura Phillips. Holy hell, how did I forget that? At team Laura Phillips. Phillips is Phillips. Connect with me there and let me know what your main takeaways were. I appreciate you for being here. Have a beautiful day and slay.